Iowa City, Iowa. And from there, I had a couple tier twos that really helped develop me to get to the next step. I was a flight chief in Seattle area. I was the group ops chief in the 360th. I've had the pleasure of being mentored by Chief Healy on a couple of my tours when I was in the 349th and the 360th. I went out to be the production superintendent, where I met people like Sergeant Smith and Sergeant Keating, the 369th Recruiting Squadron in LA. We also covered the Pacific. I did that for a little over 2.5 years and was lucky enough to make chief. I ended up being the chief right there in the 369th Squadron, and was lucky enough to get picked up by my boss, Colonel Abear, to be the group chief here at 369. So that's me.
Thank you, sir. Next person I'd like to introduce is Chief Master Sergeant Healy.
Hey, Sergeant McGill, appreciate it. And team, great to see y'all on here. First of all, thanks for the invite. It's a real privilege, I promise you. Hey, so just a quick rundown. I started out as an EA recruiter in the 341st down in Port Arthur, Texas. Went up to be a trainer, tier 2 trainer in 345th there at Scott. Got to come down and be a flight chief. There's a gentleman on here that some of you might not know. He's a little older now, by the name of Senior Master Sergeant retired Ken Journey. Yep. How you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. I got just the privilege of working for him for my first year as a flight chief. That was a great experience. And then went on to be a senior trainer at 331st there at Maxwell. Then up to a pro soup time in New York, 313th. I think where Ken Journey was a recruiter up there in 313th, I believe. Up in Syracuse, just an amazing opportunity up there. And then did my graduated pro soup time here at the group in 60th. Went over to 14th when I made chief to be the superintendent. Then in my current position here as the group chief in 60th for going on a couple years now. So again, thanks for the opportunity. Really excited. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Next person I'd like to introduce is Chief Master Sergeant Davidson.
Thank you, Sergeant McGill. Good afternoon, everybody. Also echoing those words, thanks for having us on, and I appreciate your time and leadership out there. Just a quick background on me. I came into recruiting in 1999. Started off in Northern California as an EA recruiter. Did 3 tier 2 assignments. So, was able to get a good spectrum of different viewpoints. I was a MEPS-LINCO. I went to the headquarters, was on the old recruiter screening team. I actually crossed paths with a senior journey there back in the day. And then went out to Japan to be the recruiter in Okinawa, Japan. From there, went to Southern California as a flight chief. Then they sent me back out to the Pacific to be the overseas superintendent. Went over and was the pro soup out in Central South Florida. Then I got to go spend some time with the Army for a year. I attended the Army Sergeant Major's Academy out at Fort Bliss. Came back to the headquarters as the enlisted session superintendent, and then went up to Michigan as the superintendent, and then been out here in Utah for about 8 months now. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate all of you coming out and taking the time out of your day to be able to do this today. Of course, the first thing I'm going to lead into is, what is your early recruiting experience like? For me, I'm a rookie, but I'm about to get certified next month. So I would love to hear what your recruiting experience was in the beginning. Whoever would like to go first.
I'll take this one. I came in as a young senior airman, staff sergeant. Recruiting was a big eye opener for me, coming in from maintenance and just going out there to hometown USA. I was in Concord, California, really thinking you have a master of things until you're put out there on your own and having to learn how to run your own business. In the beginning, it was really working to master the fundamentals. And I know that sounds really cliche and corny. And where I get with it, it actually took me a couple of years to do that. to truly get a handle on it. Because sometimes I think we know better than those mentoring and developing us, so you try to bucket a little bit. And then once you finally like settle in and like, okay, you know what, maybe there's some value to this. From there, my last year out there got a little bit easier. The times then were probably very similar to the times now. It was a month-to-month goal with you started on the first with nobody in the Q&W and you ran till the last day of the month, and hopefully everybody you sent to MEPS qualified and booked a job, and then the next month you started over again. So I think that really helped me develop my skills way back then to kind of guide me through the rest of my journey here. Over.
I can go next. I too came out there as a senior airman. I'm pretty happy we're taking senior airman again. I was only in for 4 years when I became a recruiter. I did ALS while I was a recruiter. So I was young and it was difficult. I was nowhere near a base. I'll tell you, that was by far my hardest tour I've ever had in my career. It was the most exhausting. I've never been more stressed in any job I've ever had, and I wear that right here on my heart when I'm thinking about our recruiters every day, is the struggles that I went through. I was in the Midwest in Iowa City, and it was not a military friendly area. I had a parking space right outside of my office where they protested once a month. It was just weird. I thought Midwest would be real military friendly, but not where I was. But I learned a lot through that. There's no such thing as a walk-in Iowa City, but it really taught me some things. I had to really focus on a lot of different core competencies that really helped propel me forward in my career. I look back on that time and I learned a lot, and I realized that I probably made things very difficult for some of my bosses. I was probably a little bit of a pain in the tail. But I look back with good memories on that experience, and just really try to remember the trials and tribulations that I went through. That's what I got.
Hey, thanks.
Definitely. Oh, sorry, sir. I was like, I can definitely relate to it being my first year, and this is definitely the hardest path or job that I've ever done. So I just wanted to relate to that.
Hey, so I'll dig in on that one a little bit. Hey, first of all, I do want to tell you that I have when I'm talking about these two group chiefs, I have a work spouse. My work spouse is my boss. We spend a lot of time together, but I would consider these two guys right here my other work spouses. I mean, we talk because even though we cover the globe in recruiting service, it's still a small family, and we try to our best to speak with each other about where we're headed, because we know that all of you speak as well. So that's just so key and critical. I came in as a staff in recruiting service, and I remember, so I was in Port Arthur, Texas, which is about 280, I think 300 miles from the headquarters, from that squadron headquarters, I believe, out I-10 past Houston, right at the edge of Texas. We're one county over from going into Louisiana, so it's almost the last city before you leave Texas on I-10. I will tell you that if you're thinking of, man, he was in Texas, recruiting's easy there, think different. Port Arthur's a little bit different than the rest of Texas. But I want to say something about that as well. I remember when we did my list, me and my wife did our list to go into recruiting. We put Port Arthur as number, it was the last one on the list, like 35 or 40. I don't remember the number, but our mindset was that our number 35 or 40 was our number one, that at the end of the day, we just wanted a job. So that was the mindset. But I tell you, I didn't make it easy on my flight chief. I wouldn't say I was a problem. I just didn't have a great attitude and about it at times. And I remember my flight chief making a statement to me that, hey, Sergeant Healy, don't you remember going through recruiting school 6 months ago? And that nice shiny plaque with the front of that door talks about attitude is everything. Do you think that stopped at recruiting school? It continues in the field. And it's so true. I remember going to quarterly trainings and flight management meetings and think about the 341st Recruiting Squadron. For some of you that might be on here, you've got recruiters from Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and I'm in Port Arthur. And I just didn't have a great attitude for the first few months because my thought was I was comparing my zone to everybody else's zone. That my zone can't produce like Houston or San Antonio or Austin. And I tell you what, nothing else changed. Nothing else changed for me in my zone, but my attitude. That's really the only thing that changed about the things I needed to do and really start controlling the things that I could control and doing my job. And knowing that everything that I was going to get out of my zone, me making mission and overproducing, was going to come from me getting out of my office. We've got 55 recruiters up here right now at the group headquarters going through some training down the hall, and really kind of told them about this because I'm hearing some of these things out there about my zone this and my zone that. Yeah, there are zones that are created a little different than others, but I tell you, there was to go back in a little bit of history, there was a recruiter that a lot of us remember on here by the late great Mark Terry. There's some people on here that I'm looking at right now that was the #1 recruiter in the Air Force for a couple or 3 years, probably going straight in Manhattan, Kansas, in a mall that nobody would go to shop. Let's just be real about that. I hadn't gone to his office for about a year after I knew him. And when I went to, and he wasn't even in there, I went to visit another recruiter. And when I went to that office, I said, this is where Mark Terry recruited. I had these visions that he recruited in this amazing office and a great mall that everybody wanted to go to. And it just wasn't the case. What was great about his zone was Mark Terry. He got out and he was just so personable and he connected with people. And at the end of the day, what I figured out was we have a great product. We have a great product in the Air Force. But at the end of the day, that airman just wants to be you. That's really what they want. They want to find themselves in your shoes. How can I get that uniform and be that person? So that was my experience that wasn't my experience for the first 6 months of recruiting until I got an attitude adjustment pretty quick and figured out that I need to get it together. And everything just turned for me really quick. That I started effort. I started grading on effort, and I put in the effort, and everything started showing up. So, thanks for the time on that.
Thank you all for sharing your past experiences. What I'd like to lead into now is, how do you think recruiting is now in the present compared to what it was like then? Like, any differences that you see? Is it better?
Matt's going to talk about not having typewriters now.
Hey! I may have been the last, standing recruiter that did use a typewriter.
I'm just picking on you.
No. If you want, I can lead off with that one again. And I actually had the privilege. I didn't quite get it right the first time, so they let me recruit again. They said, "Hey, we need you to go refire." So, I actually recruited, did enlisted session recruiting for 6 years in 2 different locations, 2 different eras, and I think the key is for both of those eras was, we use these terms of agility, flexibility, and fundamentals. If I look in the, like I said, I came in 99. If we know our history, that was the last year the Air Force missed a goal, and we went to 2000, 2001. My goal my first 2 years was my first year was a 58, and so it was a different challenge. Then it was like a volume challenge. We didn't have some of the process challenges we did today. Then it was just truly the recruiting environment was very similar today. There was, literally a war in Eastern Europe. Economy was good. Housing market was strong. And it was indifference to the military, military service. And I recruited in the Bay Area. And so just understanding, that I had to just be present in my AOR, that I think similar to what Chief Healy said, and Chief Poff, if I was in my office, wasn't going to be successful. So it was just really out there living in my AOR, living in the schools, living in, the areas where the kids were hanging out, just being present and getting comfortable with me. And I'm not a huge extrovert. So it was a real challenge for me just to go up and talk to a random stranger, but I learned just putting myself in the situations where I was available, that over time, like people would come to me, I would get more comfortable, and then I could go approach them. So that era was very similar. And then as I drifted on, I was a recruiter in 2008 to 11 out in Japan. And, it was a different challenge, because then it was more about the management of the recruit, because we had so many recruits versus what we actually needed. And so then it really required, like, how are we mentoring, developing these recruits who are going to be in depth for maybe 6 to 8 months versus my first time, who, they were maybe shipping in 2 to 3 weeks, or, 6 weeks. They were in depth for more than 6 weeks. It was like, man, they're an old timer. And also recruiting literally on an Air Force base, and most of my sessions, 95% of my sessions were DoD dependents, and Chief Poff has a little experience with that, being the pro soup out there. But ironically enough, the things I brought with me from my first tour, just that presence of, I probably could have sat in my office there on Canadian Air Base and put in 25, 30 kids a year, made goal. But getting out in the base community, which was my community, getting in the high schools and the community just on a consistent basis. And that same thing, I didn't really change as a person, still, introverted, but being present and allowing the community to get comfortable with me really helped me achieve a lot more success that second tour than I did that first tour. But it was all rooted in the fundamentals, even though, like I said, we had, a bigger Q&W. And so then as we drift to now, where it's almost a blend of the two, we have a Q&W, but we're recruiting to short-term, EAD requirements. I mean, I'm sure you guys are seeing lists every day of like, hey, we have these jobs that are leaving in the next 30 to 45 days. And we haven't seen that in years past, if you've been in recruiting service for, maybe 2 or more years. And so I almost look at it as a blend, because we're recruiting, we're putting some kids on the Q&W, but we're also need that urgency of putting some kids in the Air Force, now. So it's kind of crazy how today really blends the two together. So I'll pass it on to one of the other experts out here.
You said something, if you don't mind, Chief Healy, I'll go, but you said something, Chief Davidson, that rung out, and we talk about recruiting then versus recruiting now. And there are significant changes and processes, and we've put up many hurdles that I did not have as a recruiter. It takes a lot more for you to put someone completely through the process than I ever had, but some things are the same. So Chief Davidson talked about 99, and we missed goal that year, right? And so in 2000, there was some articles written that talked about why all the different branches missed goal in 99. And it was so interesting to hear. The things that they talked about were the political environment, trust in the government, the benefits that the military had not being as competitive as the outside industry, unemployment rate being low, and opportunities outside the military there for high school grads. And I think that's some things we struggle with today. So we kind of go on bell curves and things that we see within the Air Force. And I'm not trying to say it's the same as when I was a recruiter, because it's not. We've gone through some processes, and let's face it, we always try to improve every process out there, right? We've gone through times where they hubbed us all up because we were so fat and happy they thought that we didn't need additional recruiters and offices. So and we go through times where we add layers where they want to make sure everyone's as perfectly qualified as possible. We're going through different layers. You just saw M-Roads, and we're going through MHS Genesis. We do throw a lot of that at you. I hope everyone on this call today thinks about the things that we might be able to eliminate at our level, and ways that we can improve some things and get rid of some headaches and some roadblocks and red tape. We're open to hear it. I promise things we can get rid of today to make things smoother than I do, because I don't do your job every day. Chief Healy, Chief Davidson, and I have not put anyone in the Air Force this year or for many years. And there's a difference when you sit where you're at and do the things that you do. And we're open to hear how we can help those processes. And I don't want to go on forever with this, but like when I was a recruiter, I could literally have someone come in for an appointment with a bag. And if they could get on the shuttle by 3 o'clock, I could have them on the next day. We'll never get back to that, I don't think. But if you can help us eliminate any red tape, we sure would appreciate it. We just want to make your lives as easy as possible.
Yeah. Hey, team. One thing that we hear when we travel is, and I just spoke to the group of recruiters down the hall about this, is that is the word innovation. It's a great thing, and progress is good. Progress is good. And why are we reverting back to some old things, right? Just some of the things we hear. One of the things I told them, and I tell when I travel, is that if you had been in recruiting service prior to March 2020, which was when the pandemic hit, and you looked at it then and look at it now, but we have really come onto some innovative practices. There's no doubt about that. And if it seems like we are not moving that ball forward, which we are, but in some areas, but if it seems like we're not moving it forward in innovation, that comes at a price at times, and it's a risk. And you take risks when you can afford to take them. And as all of you know, right now is a challenging time to make mission in recruiting service for a variety of reasons that we don't need to get into here. But the easiest thing, the most effective ways of making mission for us in recruiting service, and all this is debatable, but the effective way of doing it right now is doing the things that we know and our structure is built on, that we teach to in recruiting school, that our trainers train to, that our flight chiefs who have been in recruiting service for a bit, and our pro soups and the chiefs that learned on and taught on. So that's familiar to us doing right now to get out of this time that we're in. And I'm confident, and I know Chief Poff and Chief Davis is confident that we will get there. I'm very optimistic about that. We will get there. It just maybe feels right now that we're not. But at the end of the day, we've always believed in the hybrid approach, all innovation or all legacy. And the hybrid approach, there's a market of applicants out there who want to only communicate via social media. But I think what we've done at times is we have then also segregated a market, saying that is the only market, and that's all they want to communicate by is social media, where we still have a large market out there that still loves the face-to-face, the hand-to-hand contact that is always going to be relevant in a sales organization. At the end of the day, you are going to make contact at times, even via social media, but you're going to have them in your office, and you're going to have to communicate with them, right? So the hybrid approach is where I feel we need to be in that, but we are much more innovative than we were pre-pandemic. There's no doubt about that. I just think we're trying to get to a place where we use a blended approach, some innovative practices with our legacy items that still work in any sales organization. Any sales organization out there still is the handshake practice as well, the face-to-face and getting out there and being seen. Because I still go back to that time where I said earlier, at the end of the day, we have a great product. There's a reason that we all came in the Air Force. We made that decision. And a lot of it's the product that the Air Force has. But a lot of it is because you wanted to be that person. You saw yourself in that uniform. How can I be that individual? And that positive influence out there is where we need to be outside of the office, being present at our AORs. So thank you.
Thank you. I love that you all kind of brought up the changes and how it's kind of combining now that, you know, a little bit of depth, but also leaving kind of early as well. But now going on to how do you think recruiting will be in the future? I know there's been some changes, of course, brought back, you know, senior airmen now. So what do you think will be in the future along with those changes, like the senior airmen?
I think we'll really get to develop people along the process. We brought in tech sergeants for quite a while, and that was a lot of people making master sergeant on the bag in their EA tour. And there are many people that are phenomenal at going from a tier 1 to a tier 3. But when we create change for the future and we really try to develop our enterprise, I think there's a lot of value added in developing them in different tiers. There's a lot of value in someone going to SW, someone going to HP, someone going to be a trainer in ops or MEPS. When you have that experience and you go be a flight chief, it's already a learning gap to go be a flight chief, but it helps a lot when you understand different processes and are able to train on it. I think that Chief Davidson and I did more than the average person does for tier 2s, but I tell you what, I learned a lot from it. I take more from my tier 2 experiences than some of my other positions. So I think that helps. I think that I hope that as the future of recruiting service, I don't think that the 3 group chiefs on here, some of the other chiefs that I see on here are the future. And the people listening are the future of recruiting. And I hope that you look at it as you want to get developed, you want to feel uncomfortable and go find things to develop yourself on. I hope you want to leave where you're at and go somewhere else and get a breadth of experience from a different part of the country and go do different jobs. I think with that approach, it'll lead us to a much stronger Air Force than we are, and a stronger recruiting force than we are even today. I know that Chief Healy and Chief Davidson and I, we really only want to leave recruiting service better than we received it. And I'm hopeful that, you know, when I'm in a position like Ken Journey right now, looking back on some of the people that he mentored along the way, I get to see the bright shining stars out there leading us into the next generation.
No, I think that's spot on, Dave. And you know, when you're talking about the futures on this call right here, and it's not us that are talking, you know, and it's, I think out of, you know, this last couple of years, it really helped us reflect on, you know, maybe some just opportunities we had for improvement. You know, we had an era of prosperity, and you know, as you go through those things, sometimes you know we maybe don't adapt or identify as quickly as we need to for future operations. And so I think this last 2 years has really helped us kind of put a focus on that. And you know, we keep talking about the fundamentals, and Chief Healy talked about like just that handshake, belly button to belly button recruiting, and using that as our launching point, and then relying on, you know, really, like I said, you are all the future. And how do we modernize some of those things that we know work, modernize, adapt to continue to carry us to be able to get maximum footprint out on our AOR, to inspire you know, the next generation, your replacements, not ours, because we're talking to ours right now. And then, you know, be able to ultimately, how do we connect with them, you know? And I think, you know, that's this last year's also helped us like understand that there's some opportunities and capabilities that maybe we weren't using because we were so comfortable. I think Chief Poft alluded to that, right? It's continuing to make ourselves uncomfortable. And I think something we've learned is even continue to make ourselves challenge ourselves even during what we would consider the prosperous times when maybe we might not need to challenge ourselves as much. So that way we're more adaptable when we need to be. Over.
Hey, one of the things I'm gonna go just a couple of different directions. Thanks for it's a great question. But I'll take it. Chief Davidson and Chief Pop hit some really great areas. I'll take it just from a personal experience area, and I'll take it. I remember, and I'm gonna reference just there's so many people on this call here that I scrolling through. Man, the names are so familiar that I've worked for. It's endless. But I remember going to be a flight chief in Tulsa. And these are my words, not his. This is how I remember it. Whether he said it or not, this is how I took it. But I remember, like I said, Ken Journey was my pro soup there. And his expectations were pretty simple. Lead and develop your people, hold yourself and your team accountable. That's exactly what I got from him. And from that, I remember making a statement to him, and it was in all goodness, whether he took it that way or not. But I didn't want him in my zone per se, not the development, but I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to lead my people, and I knew that if he had to get involved, then there's probably something I'm missing there. But that kind of started even a year before that. That was my tier 2. Chief Poff and Chief Davidson mentioned their time in the tier 2 area. I'm all about advancing our people, no doubt about it. We have some people who are fantastic leaders in the tier 1 area who are very worthy of going from tier 1 to tier 3. But I think over the past few years, we have underrated the need for tier 2. That I'm gonna tell you something. I didn't learn to be a good flight chief or a good pro soup at the tier 1 and tier 3 area. I learned at tier 2. Quite frankly, I was a trainer in the field, and my eyes were wide open to a lot of things. And did I want to go to tier 2? Not at first, but the thought process kept coming back is, bloom where you're planted. Bloom where there's things to learn there about what we do and the progress of our command and where we're headed. So we've made over the past year or two, the enlisted development team in AFRS has put a concerted effort on the importance of our tier 2 folks. Because there was a time not too long ago where we were pretty heavy in recruiters, pretty heavy in flight chiefs. If you looked at our tier 2 area, we were struggling. We were advancing our people very quickly to tier 3. And then we made some concerted efforts in the manning area and the development area to make sure we fund, because we figured out pretty quickly that the success of our command was just as important for the tier 2 area than anything else. And making sure our folks were ready for those positions. And to be honest with you, I being a tier 2 trainer and having that mindset of protecting my reputation, protecting my name, getting involved, learning as much as I could, really paid off in that area as for others. Going back to Ken Journey, I don't know if he remembers this, but I remember being a trainer up in 45th with Ian Klein. I see CMAS Sergeant Klein on here. He's a pro soup. He and I were trainers together. And I got a call from Ken Journey, who was the pro soup at the time, and Chief Kavanaugh was the group chief. And they called me up there and asked me if I would consider coming to Tulsa to be a flight chief. Of the work that I did as a tier 2 trainer really developed me and made me ready for that position. We see a lot of flight chiefs who get into that flight chief position, and boy, it's a real struggle. So don't underestimate the tier 2 area. We've made some concerted efforts, and I do believe the future of our command is we're going to make sure we continue to fund that tier 2 area for the development of our recruiters in that support area. And it is another 3 years, but I tell you what, it'll go down in my 20 years in recruiting service as one of the best areas for my development. And I think we'll continue to do that over the next few years.
Thank you so much for sharing that and what you think the future is going to look like. And so we went over kind of the past, your past experiences. your present and then what you guys are thinking in the future. So now it's kind of open to questions. If anyone has a question, if you put it in the chat. I don't see anything in the chat right now. So of course I'll kind of start the questions. So for me, how did you know you wanted to stay in recruiting? To me, the flight chief position seems kind of daunting. And that's kind of the only thing really that's kind of like, I'm not sure if that's something I want to do. So how did you know that that's something that you knew you wanted to do and kind of overcome?
Great question there. The reason I stayed in recruiting was I spent 3 years selling the Air Force and selling it. And it re-blued me, as I got to, and I'm sitting right here in a recruiter's office, and it's so cool. I'm going to share this real quick with everybody. Never mind. I can't. Oh, this is why right here, all these young men and women, that, we were changing lives. And so I just, the opportunity out there changing lives, it just, like I said, it re-blued me. And then, I did 3 tier 2s, which I think absolutely prepared me to be a flight chief. But for me, I always wanted to be a flight chief because of, and I think, Chief Healy talked about it, lead and develop. And for me, it was taking all that knowledge that I had gained through my career and being able to, just give all of that to, new recruiters and help them avoid maybe some of the struggles that I went through, and also, help change lives. And I'll say this, being a flight chief, I love every single job I've done in the Air Force and in recruiting, but being a flight chief, just out there in an AOR with your recruiters, and just the direct impact you have on the mission and the morale of those airmen, there's nothing like it in the Air Force, because it really forces you to bond and be a team. And for me, it was maybe some of the most rewarding years of my Air Force career, being a flight chief. I look back on it fondly, just like I said, just because of the family style environment and the impact I was able to have on those airmen directly every day. Over.
So I didn't want to be a flight chief when I left being a recruiter either, Sergeant McGill. I was excited to go to AFRS. I worked in headquarters standards, which is like an ops job at the headquarters level. And I had no intention other than having fun. I wanted to stay in recruiting because I love the camaraderie within it. I loved the competition within it. Like, I enjoyed the fun and seeing people's trajectory change. So I went down to AFRS and I started getting good mentors around me. And those people inspired me to want to start working towards something, to start working towards being a flight chief in a pro soup. And then I got out to be a trainer in my second tier 2. And it was cool because Ken Journey put me up as the interim flight chief in Joplin, Missouri, right when the tornado went through. And I got to lead those airmen there. And it was, I realized how much I loved it and how far I wanted to go with it. And that was when I set goals to go be a pro soup. At first I had to be a flight chief at that point, but I built those goals from there. It really just came from mentors and people giving me opportunities to do the job. And it just kind of went from there.
Yeah. Hey, great stuff. And I'll keep it short because I know there's a lot of questions coming in. Going from tier 1 to tier 2 for me, I think we all go through times where we make decisions. So it kind of varies, right? Some based off of the Air Force professionally, and then some personally selfish, right? We balance those. For me, going from tier 1 to tier 2 was just got a great assignment. I played the assignment game, went to Scott. It was great. Didn't really, what's a trainer? What's tier 2? I'll do it. That's fine. I enjoy what I'm doing. But I really became committed to recruiting service and the people during that tier 2 assignment as a trainer, just being in the field, seeing the folks, and really helping recruiters do the job, and seeing them really blossom. And then, about two and a half years into my trainer job, I just, at that point, I was in love and wanted to be a flight chief and lead people. And it just took me from there. So I just, like I said, balance that way between Air Force decisions and personally selfish for your family. If you can get some of those close to each other, man, it's win-win. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So there are more questions in the chat. So the first one is from a Master Sergeant Green. Good afternoon. I was a senior airman recruiter and was fairly successful. I'm glad that we were getting them back, but then we went away with hiring them. Why did we stop hiring them?
I can jump on that if you want me to. Some of you might remember a scandal in BMT, and it hit AETC really hard. And they wanted to really look at professional relationships. We didn't want to see what had happened in BMT happen outside of that atmosphere. And let's face it, AFRS has had some inappropriate relationships ourselves. We've had some black eyes. It's not a good thing at all. But they wanted to do their best to avoid that. So their thought process was, let's if it's a single man office, it has to be a tech sergeant. And then if it's multiple people in an office, it can be a staff sergeant or a tech sergeant. And they got away from the senior airman. I'm glad that years later they peeled it back a little bit and realized that senior airmen weren't the offenders more often per se. We realized the value in being young. Let's face it, a younger recruiter can relate better to today's youth. Sergeant McGill, I guarantee you can relate to today's youth way better than I can. And for good reason. You see things and hear things through that lens a lot better than I do. So that's a gist of how it happened.
Awesome. Thank you for the responses. I got a couple more questions. So a question from Master Feliciano, hope I'm saying that correctly, from the 349th H Flight Chief. Do you feel that this generation of applicants today value things differently versus the applicants we recruited back in day? Shout out to the Group Chiefs and Kenny Journey.
I'd say that's probably a tough one to answer. When you look at the generations and what each generation values, I do think that values, the fundamental values of the people that we put in the Air Force, I don't think change, like their value set of the people we enlist. And I think those stay pretty steady. The general populace value set, probably fluctuates, a little bit. And, this is why it's so important for us to reestablish our presence out there in the AOR so that we can, when we talk about Propensed and QMA and all that, is just reestablishing our presence out in the AOR and, reestablishing that option, as Chief Healy continues to say, we have an amazing product. Not reintroducing it, but continuing to ensure its widest spread possible, so that the young men and women out there that the Air Force needs, that we get that message to them, and maybe even a little bit earlier than we have in the past few years. As like we talk about, when times are good, we maybe retract a little bit and we focus more on do I need to go talk to junior or freshman and sophomore? I already have a Q&W that's so big and so many leads. And so we maybe drift away from engaging with and talking to as much as we did in the past. And so it's getting back to maybe some of those fundamentals where we're planting that seed at an earlier stage so that we are attracting those value sets that the Air Force values, and is maybe the shot group getting a little bit tighter? Yes. And so that's our challenge of how do we expand our footprint to make sure that we can hone in on where those young men and women are. Over.
Yeah, I agree. I think the values are very close to the same values. It's still someone that has the values to want to step up and serve. You wonder why so many people come in your office want to be medical. It's because what do they think of when they want to be served? They want to take care of people, right? They want to serve. We've got to show them how they can serve in ways that we need them to serve. But I think the values are the same, but I think that the way that applicants get and receive information is different. They didn't have that. They didn't have the interwebs and Mr. Google when I was a recruiter per se to go look all these things up. They never had Reddit. They never had the amount of information they have on many different social media platforms. And just the way they communicate, it's a little bit different. We just have to be receptive to that and understand it.
If I can just say one thing on that as well, not at all different from Chief Davidson and Chief Bob there. I think that the value set is not a lot different. What they value in what they want to enhance their life, maybe so. I mean, we've introduced, years back, a completely different retirement system because for a variety of reasons, but at the same time, I do believe we have a large population out there who does not think beyond 4 and 6 years. That's a lot of our applicants today, and we had some of those back then. But any of our surveys, 15, 20, 25 years ago, were highlighting the fact that we had the applicant was looking beyond. They were looking at careers, and today they're not. It's very, very short, small window today. But as we get out and we see these applicants, you'll find, and you already are, I'm sure, that for some of these applicants, you're the closest thing to a mom and dad they have. And when you start talking about your life, you probably won't find a lot of difference in the values. They just at times didn't know how to display that. And you're giving them something in a way to display that in the Air Force. That I think is the difference. The way we communicate, yeah, no doubt. There's quite a bit of difference there in that manner. But in their values and then what they value, those are two very different things. But the values, I think, are similar. What they value might be different, but we still have something to offer there.
Awesome. Thank you all for your insight on that question. We have about time for about one more question. So let me bring that up. All right, question from Texart Carlson. Are there issues nationwide with receiving leads through the Lead Refinement Center? Typically, I'd receive 4 to 5 per week, but I've gone months without receiving leads that also weren't routed anywhere else in AFRS. Those that are coming through now have emails, but no phone numbers. In my experience, the younger demographic rarely check their emails, but will check texts and answer phone calls.
Yeah. And some of those emails you're saying go to their spam folder. So then maybe they don't even get those. So there's been a fix in place. The groups identified it maybe a little late, just being honest. We found out that when someone went to airforce.com that you filled out basically your name and your email, and you had to go confirm, which you still have to do, confirm in your email that you want to create an account. And for a while it didn't have a phone number. It was taking you directly to the AFWIN. So it was taking you to AFWIN without just giving your information over to the recruiter. And then some people finished it, some people didn't. And then afterwards you had a chance to go ahead and put your phone number. And we found a lot of leads didn't have phone numbers. And therefore we found a lot of leads not being able to be contacted or not contacted. A few months ago, we brought this to General Thomas, and General Thomas slapped the table real quick and said, go fix that. And so now it has your phone number right away when you log on and request information or apply now button in AFRS or AFRS.com. So there's been fixes in place. Yeah, I apologize for that. We said something as soon as we saw it. I don't have any other excuses. You can blame us on that.
No, absolutely. And this is where, as you all are out there and you're encountering these challenges and you see these things, please communicate. And absolutely, we work to get that as fixed as fast as possible. And like Dave's, Chief Bob said, we're maybe a little slow on that one. So our apologies. But please be our eyes and ears out there. If something's not working like it's supposed to, don't be afraid to don't just grind through it. Communicate it and help us identify so we can get fixes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say not a whole lot more to add. That's on us. There's no doubt about it. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. And it just like Chief Davidson said, we're not everywhere. We've got to know, and you're out there. You've got to let us know and continue to do that so that we can get. Listen, it benefits us. It benefits the command for us to get after these problems. So we do not want to sit on it. But yeah, appreciate. Sorry it happened late. Hopefully we got it fixed out there for everybody. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. So this will be the last question because we only have about, a few minutes left, but another one from Techstart Carlson. Is there any way to simplify the online application process through AFRS.com so that an applicant can get routed to a recruiter more quickly? I've gotten feedback from a few 17, 18-year-olds that creating an account and completing a questionnaire was a lengthy process, only to repeat that Q&A and then some during an initial appointment.
It is an issue. If you want to go ahead first, Chief Davis, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we've relayed that over to General Thomas. We want an expedited path. Now it does still give the path that if they want to contact a recruiter, they put their zip code, they'll get the contact information. But yes, I do realize that they're repetitive in some things. I do realize that when they take the AFWIN, they're going to have to still take it again. We got issues with our system. We're the world's greatest Air Force, and it doesn't seem that way when we have to have them repeat processes throughout the process. So we have voiced this up. It does require man hours of changing a website and processes, and hopefully we'll get some things fixed up. If you have specific ways that you would like to see it work, let us know. Let us forward that up. You can email me anytime. You got an idea, I'm ready, willing, and able to listen to it. And I'll take whatever you have and relay it forward.
Would any other chiefs like to add on to that, or?
No, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both Chief Poff, Chief Healy, and Chief Davidson for taking the time out of your day to, be able to speak with everyone in this chat and being able to record it and have people, rewatch it. And that's pretty much sums up the meeting for today. And so that's it. Hope you all have a good day.
Before everybody takes off, I have a couple parting things. We have 2 meetings upcoming. We have Chief Goldstrom, Command Chief, coming on April 7th. We'll be sending out that meeting information soon, so please tune in. And then at the end of April, we'll be hosting a mental health seminar, giving everybody some best tips out there for the field. So a lot of good stuff coming. Again, we'll post it out there. Try to make it as easy as possible for you guys to partake. Again, thanks, Chiefs. That's it. Have a great week. Thank you. And Chief Poff, nothing against you. I promise with the record button, I'm working on it, and next time won't happen.
It's all good. Keating said you're really bad at working Zoom. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yes, sir. I
miss
don't
you.
put it past him. Hey,
I
miss you
miss you.
too.
Yeah, I'll take it easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.